All right, Minding Your Business Community, episode number 210 of the Minding Your Business podcast, entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. We're recording this on Monday, October the 19th. Hope you're, coming off a excellent weekend. If you're listening to this right away, you may be listening to this at some time in the future. But again, it's October the 19th of 2020. We are mowing through the fourth quarter. We're already past the halfway mark of October, the point of October, and we'll get into November, and then it's going to be, Halloween, and then right into the holiday season, right? We're just mowing on through. But hope again this finds you well. Subscribe to the podcast, 5-star, wherever you get your pods. That helps us connect and grow the Minding Your Business community. And of course, you can always check me out at champronbrooks.com. I'm excited about today's guest joining us. Now, my background, of course, you all know, is in economics by major, and a lot of what I did in my banking career. So anytime I get a chance to talk to the accounting professionals, many of you know, maybe across the country, certainly I can't say across the world, but accounting majors and economic majors were always kind of mortal enemies coming up in school. There's the debits and credit side, and then there's the opportunity cost folks. And they seem to be at endless mortal war. But I'm excited to have my guest today. Chris Hervochon joins me, and he is a very accomplished CPA accountant there in the South Carolina market. He's the sole proprietor of Better Way CPA, which is betterwaycpa.com. You get done listening to this, that you check him out right there. Chris, thanks so much for joining, man. I appreciate you taking time out. Weather looks to be pretty good there. It's kind of dark and cloudy here in Memphis. Looks like we're looking forward to some showers, but it looks pretty good there.
Yeah, weather's great here. No complaints. I appreciate you having me on the show, and I'm really looking forward to our chat this morning. I'm originally from New Jersey, so certainly the weather here in South Carolina is much better during the fall than it is up there. There's no gray to worry about yet. So
right. Yeah, no doubt about it. So, man, let's jump right in, Chris. Tell us, about yourself and about kind of your journey and pathway to get to where you are today.
Ooh, great question. And I'll give the Cliff Notes version of the story.
Sure.
But I was an accounting major in college, and I also was a golfer,
Okay.
or an aspiring golfer, I guess you would call it. And I decided that probably. Well, I guess it would have been like April of my senior year. I decided that I wanted to turn pro as opposed to pursue an accounting career straight out of college. And my dad was very supportive. He said, well, you'll know when you go broke. So best advice I ever got, right? So I turned professional straight out of college and did that for about year and a half. And then figured out that, I wanted to get married. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to do other things that my lousy golf game was affording me to do. So got into forensic accounting, did that for 3.5 years, went from there to corporate accounting and finance. And I did that, worked my way kind of up the ladder through 2 different companies over the course of about 7-8 years. And right when I made the jump from forensic accounting to corporate is when I got my CPA license. And that's when I started my side hustle, which is the business that I have now. It started as a side hustle about, I guess, 10 years ago or so. And it's just one of those, and I know that your audience can, kind of relate to that, but it's one of those things that just kind of grew and grew over the course of 10 years. It starts with just doing your best friend's tax return. Then it's, friend of a friend. And then it's, I need help with my bookkeeping. And then, it's a friends and family type thing that kind of just blossoms into something more than that. Yeah. So I just got to the point. I had a moment one day. I was sitting in my office at my desk, and I just had this moment. It's like, I don't know why I'm here. I should be doing something else. I should be, I've got this other thing that's kind of just marinating in the background. I should go do that, basically, is the conversation that I had with myself. Texted my wife, told her my plan, and she was like, okay. And so we just kind of set
it was that easy, huh? She just said, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't really that difficult. So we just kind of set this plan in motion over the course of 6 months, where I transitioned out of my 9 to 5 and into, what is now, my firm, and It's me and two full-time folks. I swore when I went out on my own that it was just going to be me forever. That's not the way that it panned out. You realize, along the way that you need help. So I've got two great folks who work for me, and, I think we're a great team, and, we're helping people grow their businesses. So we're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's excellent. What attracted you to accounting? Just kind of going back, to accounting as a major. Was there something kind of pre-college that kind of, you were exposed to that, kind of, inspired that pursuit, or what did it just kind of come by happenstance? What's kind of your, interest into, the accounting realm? I'm always interested.
And this is kind of a funny story, but my dad was an accountant.
Okay.
He was CFO and treasurer for an insurance company. He's one of those folks, didn't get the CPA, but he's one of those folks that worked his way up.
Yeah.
So I took accounting in high school, my senior year, and it did not go well. And it was one of those situations where I dropped the class before I failed it. And I just couldn't wrap my head around, what we were talking about as far as debits and credits. And, we were doing everything by hand on, by T accounts on sheets of paper. And it just, as a 17-year-old kid, it just did not resonate. And I just had, I didn't care, frankly. So I took accounting in college, and I had a great accounting professor my freshman year, got an A in the class. She was an inspiration to me. She really kind of, put a bow on it as far as, here's what happens in a business. Here's how it translates to financial statements. Here's the process, the debits and the credits that work their way from one transaction to a financial statement. And here's how you take a financial statement and you operate a business using that information. So she closed that loop for me, which was great. And, I had, at that time, I wanted to be a finance major. I wanted to be an investment banker, had no idea what an investment banker was. And my dad said to me, he said, why don't you go try accounting? Let's do accounting. Yeah. Because you can do all the sorts of things that a finance major will do, as an accountant. And he made a lot of sense. So that's the path that I went down. I got my undergrad degree. And I've liked it ever since. But to start the journey in high school, it didn't go well, which is it's kind of funny that this is where I ended up.
Yeah, definitely, Chris. And so, as you do that, walk us through the type of businesses that you were working with. I know you said you were kind of doing it for friends and family and kind of scaled it up. What type of businesses did you kind of start off kind of working with, or kind of that first maybe larger business that you worked with? And, how was that transition today with, the type of organizations that you work with?
Sure. I started with freelance types. My largest client at the time was a property manager. She had a whole bunch of properties in the town that I lived, but I was in New Jersey at the time. So she had a bunch of like college rentals. So that was my largest client at the time. And like just other mom and pop type construction companies, at that point, it was very, very small. That's how I got started. I was working at the time at JP Morgan Chase, which is, that's about as big as they come, just about. So it's really kind of interesting. My first experience in corporate accounting and actually, doing the books and stuff like that was at a very well-oiled machine. And I got a firsthand glimpse of this is what good looks like. And that's kind of, and I had a good boss too. She was a really good accountant, or still is a really good accountant. So that really kind of shaped my thinking of what good accounting looks like. Coming out of forensic accounting, what we did was we audited insurance claims. So I saw the full gamut, but I never actually saw the back end of how accounting works. Yeah. We had everybody from the gas station whose insurance claim was literally a box of receipts up to, Fortune 500 companies who are very, very large, who experienced losses, and, we're trying to quantify those. So I saw the range and how those things worked from afar, but I never really got my hands dirty until I went to JP Morgan. Yeah. When I left there, I went to another mid-sized company that was kind of in this stage of being acquired by private equity and was going from that mom and pop stage to the big boy accounting department, and watching that transition as well. And that's really where I kind of cut my teeth as far as building automation and taking something from nothing to, something that's fully baked. So that's, kind of my journey as far as how I kind of learned the ropes and saw what good looked like. And, it's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like I say, you've won several awards, of course, Chris. I understand you were one of only 41 CPAs that was honored by the American Institute of CPAs. You've been a top, kind of 40 under 40 award winner. Again, there in your industry. So, obviously you've put the work in, and you're recognized and very accomplished in that. So definitely congratulations there.
I
Um,
appreciate you saying that. You're too kind.
yeah. Yeah, no, it goes a long way. And for MYB, for those of you listening, those type of organizations, you don't just stroke a check and get an award, right? It's not a popularity contest. It's not something where you just go vote online and you get all your social media friends to go vote for you online. It's not one of those things. I mean, from my understanding with that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but those organizations, they look at your work. They may get recommendations and things like that, but they're out seeking those type of folks, and they recognize their work and their relationships that they build and that sort of thing. So those aren't the type of awards where again, you stroke a check and here you go.
Yeah, the AICPA thing in particular has been transformational in my career, and that started with a conversation with my boss.
Mhm.
We were having, I don't know, it was a 90-day review or yearly review or whatever it was, and I was kind of an up and coming accountant at that point. I said, what do I need to do, to go from here to there, kind of conversation. He said, well, it's about the soft skills, and it's about, risk management is something I hear a lot about. I said, okay, well, let me look into that. And I went to the AICPA Edge conference, which was basically just a conference. It's been wrapped into the Engage conference now, but
Yeah.
it's a conference for young CPAs. It's not really technical based. It's more about developing soft skills for the most part. And so I just went and didn't know anybody there. Was in New Orleans. Was by myself. Didn't know any of the attendees or anything like that. But I was there to
Yeah.
learn, and took a lot of interesting sessions, which kind of broadened my perspective. But the networking at these conferences is really always where it starts. And so I had applied to that. This was 2018. I applied to Leadership Academy in 2017. Got rejected. And this was just after that. I said, what do I need to what are you guys looking for? What do I need to do? And I was like, well, you've obviously got to be an accomplished accountant, but what are you doing to volunteer in your community? What are you doing to volunteer in the CPA profession broadly? Those are the things that we really look at. So I've been volunteering with the South Carolina Association of CPAs for several years now. Volunteer locally in various forums. And, I applied again. I was lucky enough to get in. And that was what, so that was 2018. That was right after I had gone out on my own.
Yeah.
And, the folks that I met at Leadership Academy were, transformational to me at that point in time. And they continue to be transformational to me, as I kind of go through this CPA journey. There's a whole, network of CPAs that, we have access to, and we chat, on a fairly regular basis, just a bunch of brilliant folks that you can get best practices from and learn from, and, hopefully give back to. So it's been a really transformational experience for me. It's been great.
Yep, absolutely. Speaking of transformational, obviously 2020 has been, some year on a number of different fronts, personally and professionally, for a lot of people. Talk a little bit, Chris, about just the impact of the pandemic and what you've seen, with business owners that you work with, that impact and how you serve as a resource, for them during these times.
Mm-hmm. So the way that we serve as a resource is to basically keep our ear to the ground as far as what's happening in Congress with legislation. The CARES Act has been a big one, and
Yeah.
then just talking to clients. That's the biggest thing. Just talk to clients. What's going on in their business? What are they doing? What are they seeing? How can we be helpful? That's the one thing that's really been driven home for me during 2020 is to just ask more frequently. How can I be helpful? And it's that simple. But as far as what we're seeing, I mean, there's obviously a lot of consternation about PPP loans.
Yeah.
That died down over the summer, kind of, sort of.
Sure.
March and early April were big for that. So we had the CARES Act came out right in that time frame, and PPP loans were new. Nobody knew what they were. Nobody knew how to apply. it was rolled out kind of in haste, and that was a process. So right around that time is when we had this, was it 14 days to slow the spread or whatever it was. So you simultaneously had businesses that were literally just shutting down for a period of time that we thought was only going to be 2 weeks, which turned into a month, 6 weeks, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And they've simultaneously got these financial considerations that they need to go through. So we worked through that with them. I spent probably 2 solid weeks where all I did was just get on Zoom with clients and just talk through, here's the playbook, here's how, we're going to get through this, and here's what the goal is. At that time, the goal was, let's get through July. Let's plan to get through July. If we can have a plan to get through July, then we'll be okay. So that's really what we did. We had a couple strategies around that, but the biggest thing that I've seen right now is it's just about talking to people and asking how you can be helpful.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It's the relationship, right? Which is critical through, whether it's a pandemic or not, it's the relationship with your clients and your prospects. And so, Chris, when you talk about just having those conversations, it's being a listening ear. So being a sounding board, listening right now is the big thing. And then, like you say, not so much, selling at this point, it's more listening, finding the pain points. And then, if you have the ability to solve or mitigate a pain point, then you can present that. And I think that's going over very well. Another big thing has been, appreciating, clients. I've done some of that here recently where I've worked with, a business owner, here in Memphis, local chocolatier who's, very well known. Has actually been a guest on the podcast, and Philip Ashley Ricks. And he's served as a kind of a host of a wine and chocolate kind of virtual tours that I've done with some of my bank clients. And so that's been definitely tremendous in regards to, opening up to have that conversation, kind of differentiating those virtual interactions, because we're all inundated with Zooms and that sort of thing now. It's become actually a verb now.
Yeah.
So you talk about, like, I think my last guest spoke on, what timing, to have a company like that where, Zoom becomes a verb. But yeah, you're exactly right, Chris. That's the relationships with the clients that's always going to endure. And, those resources, those companies that are available that are, to listen and to provide insight, and convert, what you hear into, pathways for opportunity, are really going to do well. And so, with that as a question, the profit and loss statement, a lot of business owners are looking at, where are opportunities to increase income. I think, you get some folks during the pandemic that obviously want to hunker down, right? And they either more panic or they look at and attack debt, right? Which, can make sense. But, for those that are looking at how can they increase income, what should they be looking at on their profit and loss statement that can help trigger, where are opportunities for us to increase, income and ultimately profits?
It's a great question, and I love this question. One of the things that was in our playbook that we gave to clients back in March, April was think of creative ways that you can increase revenue. And it may not necessarily be something that you're doing today. Just think creatively. All right. A lot of our clients are marketing and creative agencies. So that's what they do anyway. They're creative people. But if your business has been impacted by the pandemic, if you have a product or service that you can no longer deliver, then you need to do something else. Right. Just think creatively about what you can deliver. If you think about restaurants are great examples. Those are the ones, it seems, especially in my area, because we're very tourist driven and hospitality driven. So if you own a restaurant, and if you can now do takeout, if you can now offer delivery where you didn't offer delivery before, if you could have some sort of an outside dining experience where maybe you didn't maybe you had one before, maybe you don't. If you can, a great example, client has a Latin cuisine restaurant. If you can now do like take out drinks, take out alcoholic beverages, and what they did was they were able to like seal the lid in a certain way where it was now legal or whatever.
Right.
That's a great thing. But just offer something that you didn't offer before that now fits a need or a want that folks have during the pandemic. So that's number one. Now, as far as what's actually on the P&L, obviously take a look at revenue, because revenue is what's ultimately going to take a look or turn into cash. That's the first side. The other side is the expense side. Be fairly liberal with cost cuts. The way that you do that is if you have good data that underlies the P&L. The P&L on its face is great, and it's, it helps you make decisions and all that stuff. But really where the business decisions need to happen is the data that sits underneath the P&L, the data that gets compiled in order to create that P&L. So if you've got expense data where you've got vendors that are associated with every expense, it makes it a little bit easier. Like, do I really need this Dropbox subscription when I already pay for G Suite because I've got Google Drive, that sort of thing? How can I save a few bucks? How can I be aggressive in cutting costs? So start there. Now, from a revenue perspective, is revenue increasing or decreasing? We already talked about coming up with new creative ways to increase revenue. So that's great. But when we're looking at the revenue line, how many clients do you have that comprise that revenue line? Is it like 3 clients comprise all of your revenue? So if you lose one, it's going to be a big problem. If it's 100 and they're all relatively small, it's a much smaller problem. So that's good. So, diversification among clients, diversification among products and services. That's one place to look. What's your pricing look like? Is it market rate? Is it not market rate? What's your efficiency look like? So one of the things that we look at with agencies is average billable rate. And that's basically just, revenue divided by the number of hours that go into generating that revenue. I don't encourage anybody to bill by the hour, but we do encourage tracking of that time. So that's one way to look at it. So how has your efficiency looked over the course of this pandemic period? Is it going up or down? If you're becoming less efficient, and if you've got all of these expenses, well, then you've got to start talking about labor cost. That's one thing, of course, outside the context of PPP. If you don't track time, well, then take a look at labor efficiency ratio, which is basically just dividing your wages, into your revenue. If you're less than 2, then you need to be thinking about that's that same conversation, right? Am I not efficient with my labor? And if you're above 2, then that's generally where we want to see you. But it's not just the P&L on its face that gives you this data. It's the data that underlies the P&L that then gets compiled into the P&L, where you really need to be looking to figure out how you can be most efficient and most profitable.
Yeah, definitely. No, those are good best practices and good, kind of nuggets for us to take as, for those that are, business owners at that scale, to go back and kind of take a look. For those that aren't, Chris, that, those that are, currently moonlighting or, kind of have more of the side hustle kind of set up and, that sort of thing and desire to, at some point either, continue to do that, or they want to transition, whatever their ultimate goal is and exit strategy, for those that haven't reached the P&L level and that sort of thing. And they may have an e-commerce business or something along those lines. What would you recommend for them, kind of during this pandemic? What should they be looking at as it relates to the accounting of that business, even if they're just starting out or fairly young in it?
Great question. Step 1, have a dedicated business bank account.
Yeah.
Step 1, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the most common problem that we see, but it's definitely in the top 2 or 3 for sure. Because what ends up happening is that, your personal funds and your business funds all get commingled together. And then you end up having this conversation. Well, was that Amazon charge on the card? Was that like business or was that like personal? What, that's the conversation you end up having with yourself, which is no good. It doesn't help you run a business. So get your own dedicated bank or credit card.
Yeah.
Number 1. Number 2, I do recommend accounting software, if for no other reason than to send out invoices and collect payments. If you're at the stage where you've got a side hustle and it's not wildly profitable and you don't want to take on additional expense, you can look at something like a Wave. Wave is free. You can send invoices through Wave, and it's waveapps.com, I believe. And it's got some expense tracking functionality, but it's not nearly as robust as QuickBooks. If you're ready for QuickBooks or Xero, that's certainly a best practice, is to have, just something that you can connect your bank account and your credit card to, that'll feed data into, a system where you can track it. And then, have somebody if you're doing that, have somebody take a look and say, this is right, this is not right, this is how you can do it better. I mean, there's plenty of QuickBooks training out there. There's plenty of simple bookkeeping help out there for relatively inexpensive. If you're at that level, that's a good thing. But great resources to have. And the pandemic actually has highlighted this too. It's always good to have an accountant that you've got a relationship with. I know that's a self-serving statement, but I think it's true.
Yeah.
Just have some sort of a relationship. It doesn't mean that you have to be paying that person every single day or every single month. I mean, but just somebody that you can call and get solid advice from. That's important. Having a good business attorney. That's important. Having a relationship with a banker. So not just a bank account, but having a relationship with a banker that you could potentially call. That's important. Having some sort of a business coach. That's important because they can help you. If you're not at the accountant level, they can help you kind of figure out that whole P&L thing.
Yeah.
And a good resource would be like SCORE or local chamber of commerce. There's folks there that are willing to donate their time for free, and they'll be able to help you. So just make sure that you have help. Make sure that you have people that you can call on that'll give you good advice. On top of having these processes in place that'll allow you to generate data that'll help you make business decisions.
Yeah. Excellent. No, I think those are good kind of streamlined, thoughts to looking at, again, at basic levels. Right. But, I think it's, powerful information for everybody to know and be reminded of, as it relates to, those early stages of business. And like I said, that's a big one that I see. And for someone that's a former banker, having your own, business bank account, separate from, your personal, and taking everything that's personal and separating it out, whether it's PayPal, Cash App, all those different, kind of payment sources, all those things need to be separate and not commingled in your business, because,
Right.
You get people that, kind of run around and they get caught up on business structure. But whether you got an S corp, LLC, C corp, whatever it is, if you commingle all the funds, you've essentially rendered the business structure virtually ineffective in the regards of protection of personal assets.
Yes, that too. Exactly. And if you're not at the P&L level, if you have a dedicated bank account, everybody's at least capable of logging in online to their business bank account and seeing this is the balance last month, this is the balance this month, and just extrapolating this is how I did. Right. If everything is commingled in your personal, you can't even do that exercise. So you're basically nowhere.
Yep, exactly. And it makes it harder, I imagine, for yourself and other kind of CPAs, accountants, to help you kind of justify things and make cases to the IRS, right? If you ever get audited or things like that, you're all short of screwed if if everything's commingled and you're trying to justify, okay, I bought that computer, but it was for the business, but I bought it on my, with Cash App using my, with my personal name, and it's like, is that true? That makes it kind of hard for you to kind of justify that up, and
100%, because we're going to have to untangle this mess at some point. Either we're going to do it at tax time, we're going to do it 2 years down the line, or at some point. Now, if we're not going to do it at tax time, what that means is that you're now providing all of the numbers to the CPA or the accountant who's going to prepare and file your tax return. Are you sure that you captured all the expenses that you should? Are you sure that that the things that are going to go into your tax return are totally justified and that they're well documented and things like that? The less data you have, the less clean it is, the more difficult it's going to be. And, ultimately that could have a tax impact, and tax impacts can be expensive both ways, either in terms of a refund or in terms of a bill that you get some point down the line that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen plenty of that for sure.
Yeah.
So you definitely got to be careful. I always like to end on, kind of the personal lifestyle piece. You mentioned, your wife earlier, Chris, and you've got 3 young ones that I saw. And so you're like me, I've got 3 daughters. And then my wife, talk about family for a second, and how family supports. Obviously, your wife was very supportive in your early transition, but just talk about how your family, kind of supports and in some cases maybe even inspires, what you do today.
It's such a big question. So I'm married, been married 10 and a half, almost 10 and a half years. So we just had our 10-year anniversary this year.
Awesome.
We've got 3 kids, boy, girl, and they're 7, 5, well, almost 5, and they'll be 5 here in 2 weeks. 7, 5, and 5, we'll say. So we've got boy, girl twins. And they're like this little gang, they're best friends, and they're right. So during one of the fascinating things, like during the pandemic, We didn't hear like a ton of like, we miss our friends. I want to go back to school and see my friends and that sort of thing. We didn't hear it like, yeah, we heard it, but not like the way that I think a lot of other parents heard it, just because they're so close.
Yeah.
You know, they're happy to just drive each other nuts all day long, every day, which is totally cool. But,
Yeah.
you know, my wife, we've been together now 15 years. She's been really, really supportive through a lot of ups and downs, for sure. Couldn't have asked for a better wife, a better partner.
Yeah.
She's never, I mean, look, I've had some crazy ideas for sure. Just the whole entrepreneurship thing is crazy in itself. I'm sure that your audience can attest to that and appreciates that.
Right.
I've had a lot of crazy ideas. She's never once told me that I'm crazy, and she's been
Right.
just super, super supportive. So, I mean, you know, that's the key. But when you're thinking about, you know, what am I doing here? What am I building things for? Where am I trying to go? I mean, it ultimately leads back to the kids.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the kids need to take over the business. It doesn't mean that, you know, they need to want to be accountants or anything like that. But, you know, ultimately the business is going to pay to put food over their head and send them to school and all of those things that, you know, parents aspire to provide for their kids. So, you know, that's kind of really what drives me.
Yeah, definitely. You know, a lot of overlap for both of us, Chris. You know, one, you know, crazy entrepreneurship ideas aren't absent of me either.
Yeah.
If my wife came on, she'd tell you. You know, so my daughters are 10, 9, and then my 7-year-old will be 8 next month, and so they're actually in school right now. We're here, and you know, they just came off a fall break, so they're back to virtual school today. And so, but no, I like you. I didn't hear a ton of they had to get back to friends. There were some because they missed the socialization naturally at that age. But yeah, because they're so close, like you say, they're close in age and they've always come up together. They're kind of their own, you know, kind of wolf pack, you know, just in themselves. And
that's a good one.
Yeah, it's funny because some of their friends and you know, some other parents who, you know, have, you know, kind of, you know, one child, they're kind of one kid households, or there's a big gap between their kids, right? There's 18-year-old and then there's the 7-year-old or 8-year-old. And so, you know, that kid then is like always around. So we'll get calls from, you know, other parents wanting to, you know, connect that way because one, they're getting worn out by the one kid who's got nothing else to do other than wear them out. That's one of the benefit that I get is, you know, even during this time, you know, Chris, is that you know, my kids are, you know, a little older now. I couldn't imagine going through this back when I was, you know, kind of really heavy in the workforce and, you know, having young kids, you know, during this pandemic, where if you got someone like kindergarten or, you know, kind of first grade kindergarten, you know, kind of below, that's, you know, that's an only child that you've got to spend a lot of time with and work your career. I think a lot of people are going through that all around. And so definitely shout out to them. That's tough to say the least. That's really tough. And I've got some buddies that have, you know, like really young kids, like toddler, newborn kids that they're trying to juggle while they're working at home. And, you know, there's the wife working at home, the husband's out, you know, out of the home or vice versa. And yeah, again, that's extremely tough. I got the, you know, the fortune of, you know, my kids are young, but they're fairly self-sufficient enough, you know, and they work together at least well enough that they can kind of entertain themselves and hold themselves accountable in some cases.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, mad respect to all the parents out there because everybody's doing it differently. Everybody's going through the pandemic in a different way.
Right.
And it's, you know, it's hard. It's hard for everybody.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating to just watch people adapt and, you know, make do and make the best of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, yeah. I mean, you know, good for them. It's a hard thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, Chris Hervochon is our guest today. Chris, if people want to connect with you, I mean, this has been a tremendous dialogue. You know, how can people do so? They want to, you know, follow you and learn more about you, or just connect with you, or someone may be listening that's kind of near your market that you know, maybe in the looking for, you know, CPA and an accountant or bookkeeping support. So how can they get in touch with you?
Yep. Very good. So the vast majority of our clients are marketing and creative agencies.
Sure.
And we service those people all across the US and actually a couple international as well on occasion.
Sure.
So I would encourage folks to go to my website, betterwaycpa.com, and then / data-driven agency. There's a brand new ebook that we put out that talks. It takes you from how do you turn the data that's in your business and how do you scale your business based on that data. A lot of what we talked about, like with the P&L and the data that underlies that, it just basically goes into a little more detail of how you take the data that's in your business to grow it. It's meant for agencies and creatives, certainly, but there's a lot of good information in there as well for any business owner. So I would encourage folks to download that. The landing page, you'll find all my contact information.
Yep. Excellent. Yeah, excellent. So in the show notes, everyone, you can go to betterwaycpa.com and you can find all the information and the things that Chris mentioned, and would love to have you all connect with Chris and let him know that you heard him right here on the Minding Your Business podcast. So Chris, listen, I can't thank you enough, man. I really appreciate it. Taking time out to be here on the podcast. Tremendous dialogue. Best wishes to you personally and professionally, and to your family, and look to remain connected.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate you having me on. This was a lot of fun, and I certainly enjoyed doing the podcast with you.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. That was Chris Hervochon, our guest today, MYB community. Better Way CPA is where you need to go, betterwaycpa.com. It's in the show notes. Go click on it, look through the website, learn a little bit more about Chris and his team. And as Chris mentioned, having a relationship with your CPA accountant is critical, whether you're in business or not. If you're dealing with transactions, you're dealing with money. Some of you are in real estate, things like that. It's always good to have that resource on your side and have a relationship there. So I encourage you to do that. Before I get out of here, again, champronbrooks.com, where you can go to learn more about me, all my ventures, and be able to definitely connect right there. There's three things that unite us all, no matter how we look in the mirror, no matter where we're from. We all want to be a little better for ourselves, a little better for our families, and a little better for our communities. Shout out to my guy, Scott Kinney, who coined that phrase for me. We all want to be a little better for ourselves, our families, and our communities. And if we keep that in mind with everybody that we interact with, we'll all make this place together a little bit better. Champ Ron, the Minding Your Business podcast.